Okay, let's call the meeting to order. The July 20th, 2023 Cecil Township Planning Commission meeting. First order of business.
Start the meeting, don't worry about me, just, I'll listen.
Dan, you're in. You're on.
We hear you, bud.
You're good.
Okay, you can hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Great.
First order of business is the approval of minutes from the June 15th meeting.
I move to approve the Cecil Township Planning Commission meeting notes from dated June 15th, 2023.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
I abstain.
All right, next item on the agenda is review of previous decisions. Jack, is there anything relevant to discuss for this month's meeting from the July Board of Supervisors meeting?
Not that I recall right now. Dan, do you have anything?
Dan, did you hear that question?
Can you repeat it, Mike?
Was there anything worth noting from the Board of Supervisors' previous meeting that you wanted to speak to?
No, other than what's on the agenda tonight.
Got it.
All right, thank you. Then we'll be moving on to old business. We have application 2022-0036, ranked plan of lots number 2, subdivision plan.
Last week, we received the another 3-month extension, and Mr. Rank stopped in, dropped it off, so we're in that additional 3-month period. Just as a side note, it has something to do with Midway Sewer and some issues there, so they have another group looking at it, and hopefully it'll be wrapped up in the next month.
Motion to table. I move to table application number 2022-0036, ranked plan of lots number 2.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion to table and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is application 2023-0017, GSL site plan addition to existing building.
Kerry Kreider from KLH. There we go. There's the proposed site plan with the addition. Parking spaces. Oh, okay. A couple of the comments, the stormwater clause and the engineer will get those signed. The 12 parking spaces that were on the previously approved site plan some years back, we'll put a note on there that they are to be paved. They're in front of the middle building. Same with, that's comment number 3. The sanitary sewers, they already have a holding tank agreement with the township. So we'll get the sewage council to, I guess not even confirm, because they have the agreement, the township does already, because that's how the existing site is serviced with sanitary. zoning table. We'll get that fixed for the parking. I believe the stormwater revisions were sent over today for that little bit.
So,
Go ahead, Dan.
Carrie, I have a question for Carrie.
Okay?
Is the agreement is the agreement for the holding tank, is it in the name of the current owner?
I'm gonna say no. I think it was under the previous owner.
Okay. So we'll need to at least get that agreement updated for the holding tank.
Okay.
And I would just want verification from the sewage council. It's okay, I mean, with another connection on it. I don't know if there's any rules related to that.
Okay. Yeah, because they just bought this property, so I believe the holding tank agreement is still under the previous owner's name.
So to the planning commission members, there were a lot of comments on this one last month. They've taken care of the majority of those comments. We have a couple minor issues related to the stormwater, which I believe that they can easily address. So I think we're in a position much better than we were last month to consider this.
Thanks, Dan. Any members of the commission have any questions or comments? Dave? No? I don't have anything additional either. I agree with Dan. It's a lot better than it was last month, and it's doable for the Board of Supervisors meeting. You'll follow up with Jack, of course, to make sure the holding tank agreement has been updated.
Yep.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve application 2023-0017 GSL site plan addition to existing building, contingent upon all issues in the July 20th, 2023 letter from Gateway Engineers being addressed.
I second the motion.
All right, we have a motion to approve in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I will abstain.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. I actually forgot about that from last month. Okay, that's it for old business. Let's move on to new business. We have application 2023-0025, Koski subdivision. What's that? Yeah, if you wanna explain.
I guess, is there anyone here to speak about the project? I can give a quick overview. Okay, so this is a project in the I-1 Industrial District. It's just a pretty simple proposal to subdivide one lot into two lots. The Lot 1 is originally 72 acres, 72.2 acres. Oh, can you guys hear me? The proposal is to subdivide a lot that is 72.202 acres into two lots, one of which being 4.689 acres and the remaining lot being 67.513 acres. As part of our comment letter dated July 18th, had a few items to clean up on the plan. The only thing of note that I would say is of significance would be that a planning module will be required to create a new lot, which would have to go through Washington County Sewage Council. Other than that, comments are generally pretty minor.
Yeah, and I talked to John Kosky on this, that nobody's intended to build any buildings on this. There's one minor structure on the property that they're gonna knock down. It's not even a habitable dwelling, so I told John that he needs to talk to the sewage council and he's gonna probably put like a non-building waiver on the remaining parcel until he figures out what he's gonna do.
Okay. Any additional questions or comments? Do we have a motion?
Make a motion, we approve application 2023-0025, the Koski subdivision plan, contingent upon addressing the items listed in the Gateway Engineers letter dated July 18th, 2023.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, next item on the agenda is application 2023-0027, Justin Campbell consolidation.
Mr. Kelly didn't come tonight. Matt, do you have,
Yeah, I could speak to it.
okay.
Yeah, so just a brief overview of this project. It's proposing the consolidation adjoining parcels. Parcel 1, which is 3.815 acres, parcel 2, which is 1.583 acres, and parcel 3, which is 0.621 acres, which a portion of that, the unopened, is basically an undeveloped portion of Andres Lane into a combined lot, which is 5.974 acres. Based off of our review, the only comment we found of significance was that there is a paper street essentially to be vacated. We had some comments and had some back and forth with the township solicitor, which their response was that they don't see an issue with the lots being consolidated. If the planning commission was so inclined, they could ask Mr. Campbell to mark the easement on the plan. However, the whole thing generally seems to be a private matter. So other than that, it's a pretty straightforward plan. No comments of significance outside of that.
Yeah, there's a process for vacating the street. I think you would need, so I think as far as approval goes, if we were to approve, he'd have to show the right-of-way until he was able to go through that process.
Right, I think Dan would concur with that.
Well, Jason, this is actually, this is Dan. This is actually a private right-of-way. It's labeled as a private right-of-way, so it doesn't, the township has no rights in it and doesn't have to really take any action. It's completely a private matter.
Okay, that makes it easier, but I think it still needs to be shown on there. If there's an existing right-of-way agreement. Would you agree with that?
Well, I don't know if the surveyor's there to speak to that, if they've checked with it. I mean, that's really up to the attorney that they would have related to it.
Brian didn't
I mean,
come.
the solicitor suggests an easement to go where the old right-of-way was.
I didn't understand that last part he said.
The solicitor recommended as part of the review that an easement can be marked on the plan to show that it did exist. It does exist.
I think that's what I was saying, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think, Dan, I think we're on the same page then.
Yes.
Any other members of the commission have any questions or comments? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve application 2023-0025 Koski. Oh, wait, we're in the Justin Campbell subdivision, I'm sorry. Application 2023-0027 Justin Campbell consolidation, contingent on all items from the July 17th, 2023 letter from Gateway Engineers being addressed.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, next item on the agenda is the proposed rezoning of Cecil Township properties.
I guess just to, to introduce this one, Matt Prinelli's with us from Gateway. He's been working with us on these ordinance amendments, and to prelude this, Dan and Matt have met with the Board of Supervisors prior in some workshop meetings to really kind of get the gist of you know, what's intended in these ordinances, and this is essentially to capture the conversations that were had in that workshop. So Matt's going to go ahead and pull up the PowerPoint, which was part of your packets that you guys have here.
Okay, guys, let's first start out with what we have in front of you. So there is a stapled PowerPoint. I'm going to use this as like a guidebook. We're going to walk through the changes with the slides just to keep us all organized. Second thing is this smaller of the two ordinances. It has the smaller title block. This is the proposed new zoning districts. The last thing I have in front of you there is the general changes to the UDO. It's a little bit bigger. And again, we'll get to these through this presentation. All right, so the first thing we're going to start with here is the proposed zoning map changes. So this slide here just has a nice overview of the 4 changes that are being proposed. Change 1, which is on the next slide, it zooms in for you. Changing existing R1 to MUC, which is the new mixed-use commercial, MUR, which is the new residential mixed use, C1 and R2. This is an area of the township that the Board of Supervisors has pointed out to being one that they would like to see developed and is primed for development. Any questions with this change here?
I have a question that's actually before we get to the changes, and it's just because I need my memory to be refreshed about this. Business park development definition, does that include housing, residential housing?
I would not assume so. I don't know the answer to that off the
The
top of my
reason,
head.
I was looking at this map, and maybe somebody can answer this question, or Jack can, but at the bottom of the map where there's near North Strabane Township, and there's a tan portion, and that to me looks like what was the proposed Cool Valley Phase 1, and that's listed all as business park development, and there was a substantial amount of housing proposed in that. So I just wanted to get a clarification about this business park development section. Oh, good.
residential, it was not a permitted use in the business park district. But, the developer, the property owner came to the township several years ago, and create the interstate highway, overlay district. So that was a new zone that it really was created, and then that property that is being, considered right now with the residential properties next to your plan is, actually, interstate highway overlay district. It's not BPD anymore.
So shouldn't this map reflect that?
It does.
Okay.
So, see the interstate highway plan district, the crosshatch. So it's an overlay district. So it's over top of.
Okay,
So
great,
it's- so it's
great.
BPD, but then there's an overlay district over top.
Okay, I appreciate the clarifications because I hadn't looked at this in a while. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, any further questions here to change number 1? Any comments? Okay. Change number 2 to the map is Business Park District and R2 existing, and it's going to be changed to I1 and the new multi-use commercial. On the left there, you see the existing map, and on the right, you see the proposed changes. And again, we'll get to what the new districts mean. I just want to show you where we're thinking they'll be. Change 3 will expand the SD district upon some R1 district. You can see the existing map is R1. It's going to be proposed to continue that SD northward. And then the final change is one parcel here from R1 to C1. It's in the southwest corner of the township. Any comments? Mike, Dan, do you want to elaborate? Good there?
No, I think, yeah, so Matt's essentially just going through and showing you guys where these locations are being proposed in the map, and then, if you guys don't have any questions as far as where they're located or how they were located, where, where they were selected, we can go into what specifically that means for each use, what's allowed, what's not allowed, what other amendments are being made. So I think if you guys don't have any questions, we can continue.
I would just ask for the C1, for the last one that you were saying, it looks like there's residential in between where the other C1 is, even though it's contingent and adjacent to I2. Is it okay that R1 is in there, between there? Is that allowed?
Sorry, I wasn't turned on. I had a similar question when I was looking this over because, I understand that's a large property, but it's a single property. And so you're taking a single property that's R1 and flipping it to C1. It is adjacent to some I2, but otherwise completely surrounded by R1. Are we putting ourselves in a position where that potentially could be considered spot zoning? Whereas if we expand that beyond a single property.
It really wouldn't be considered spot zoning because when it abuts I2, that's considered a step down zone. I1 is considered a higher zone, stepwise zone, commercial. So when it's a step down, it's almost like one and the same as that property that it abuts. And that I2 abuts I1. You can see that to the west there. So it's really an extension of the commercial zone. Industrial and commercial are C1, I1, and I2 all commercial zones.
No,
It's an extension of it, so there wouldn't be a legal issue with spot zoning. It's like I said, it's right in the middle, probably in the middle.
sure. And I get that. I think the question kind of ties in with her question, though, of would it behoove us to tie in the properties, existing properties that are along, say, Route 50 there?
Some of the properties are owned by that same owner. They were residential properties, not any.
But I think some of them are being used for commercial use or were, what was it? There were some offices in there being run out of those houses,
Leave that as it may.
right?
I'm saying it is residential property, but that property owner that owns the 500 acres is, owns most of those along or anywhere. So that's his buffer, like commercial development. When we looked at this, we just recognized that the South Point's done. Whatever tax base we're getting out of it today, that's what we're gonna get next year and the year after, the year after. The tax base, if they give us a check for, say, $20,000 today, next year it's gonna be the same 20,000, and next year 20,000, next year 20,000. So, and our costs keep going up. Labor and contracts and things like that. So we have to find new tax base. And as you're aware, if you attend the seminars, we're aware that commercial, we can't survive on a residential tax base, like maybe Upper St. Clair can, but the housing we're having, you can't do it. It's always been said that every 80 cents you take in from a residential development, it costs $1 to provide the services. Well, commercial, between $1.20 and $1.25 you take in for every dollar you provide in services. I mean, that fortifies our tax base. We only looked at these 4 areas because 3 out of the 4 have sewers right on it. They can be developed tomorrow. It won't develop if there's not sewers and properties all have water, one of them. That's why we looked at these 4 areas in particular, that they have either sewers on them and water, or that's one property that C1 off of, the property we were just talking about. It's only about, less than 2,000 feet from the last manhole by the old township building. So, and that property owner, he's already acquired right of way to get to that property. He had some plans years ago, he acquired some right of way for sewer, including from the township. The township gave him the right of way through our property, heading that direction, with the stipulation that the right of way would go into effect until he actually did development. So he has a right of way pending with us. But he didn't do it. So that's where this came from, is the 4 sites that we picked, because they can be developed technically tomorrow. We don't have to, we have a lot of mixed-use residential shown on this map here, but we're not even looking at that because most of that doesn't have any sewers. Probably in the near future, there's probably not much potential for that in the near future or lifetime. But we don't need to find zoning places for these developers to come in and do a residential plan. I mean, they don't come to us and ask us anything on the properties we're looking at. If every commercial business wants to come in, they come to the township and say, here's my business, what do you have for me? So that's why we got to find areas that are commercial and industrial, have them ready, and then when they come in and say, well, we got this area, this area, and this area. So that's the only reason we're concentrating on these 4 areas, because they have availability.
Sure. I appreciate the explanation on all that. Krista, does it help answer your question at all, or?
It does help from a business standpoint. I'm looking, I guess, the reason I asked is because in 50 years or 100 years, when that gentleman is no longer around to own these properties, whoever may have acquired or purchased the R1 properties, I'm just trying to look at the legal potential ramifications down the road for the township. That's all.
It's not spot zoning.
I know. It's, yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's a valid question of, is it reasonable to expand it slightly just to capture a few of those properties and to now have a definitive buffer between your I-2 in your R1. You know,
I think that's something we can look into.
I think it's a reasonable question to ask, especially if the developer, the owner of the property wants to develop, is also the owner of those properties. I think it's a reasonable question to ask.
I guess from my aspect as a supervisor, I've been here a long time, never gotten 1 inch of industrial since I've been on the board. People have, property owners have asked, how many get swamped? That's tough to get anything. It's, it's tough to get commercial, but, if we have a public hearing, there's probably gonna be people who are concerned about it. And, we ask for as little as possibly can. So we looked at that one parcel, it's, it says close to sewers, it fronts on, 980, and he owned the property that actually touches on 50. So we figured that's a prime area to be developed too. But that owner has a wherewithal to make some kind of, that could be some kind of a nice complex up there.
Sure.
So that's why we didn't look at any more than what we thought we needed. Now, that property owner can always ask to expand it if it takes on Disney World or something like that. You can ask about that, but I guess we need a starting point. We never ask for more than.
Tom, please tell me it's not in your dreams to have Disney World in Cecil Township.
My grandkids are, my kids are past that age.
So I guess just to move on is, can we, I guess, clarify, the only one you guys see any issues with, at least at this point, is change 4? Is that right, or do we need to go back and talk about any of the other ones, or just to kind of clarify?
So my notes and my thought process aren't necessarily laid out the way that this presentation is laid out. So my notes are based more off of the summary letter that you guys wrote.
Would you prefer, I guess, Matt, go through the full presentation and then we come back and revisit certain aspects?
I think that might,
Yeah.
does anybody else have an opinion on that? Maybe allow him to do the whole presentation, then we'll come back and go through maybe the summary letter. And
You guys are fine. Yeah, that's fine. So, yeah, I said we were going to get into what these actual new districts are, so here we are. MUR was the residential mixed use. Pretty straightforward. It's a mixing of residential dwelling types. The MUC provides for single-family residential, only in PRDs, and the comparable commercial uses. So like those would be coffee shops and florist shops and not big Walmarts and stuff like that. Like small local things people wouldn't mind to live beside. All right, so this now gives us the opportunity to flip through the actual district ordinance. Again, it's the small letterhead.
I think that's the one I have in front of me.
Okay, on the first page, you have subheading B and C, purpose and definitions. I kind of went through the purpose of both these districts. The definitions are just there. It's always better to have more definitions to be more clear, more precise. Flipping to the next page, we get subsection D. This is where the regulations start for the residential mixed-use district. So that first subsection there, that's the uses by right. Again, you have your mixing of the dwelling types. And then followed that by the conditional uses, which is just that community residential home. Any questions about the MUR district?
So this actually, I'm sorry, I keep shutting off. I do have questions about the MUR, and Tom, this is, you and I kind of discussed a little bit of this the other night. I understand the concept of the mixed-use residential. The only real concern I have with it right now is what I don't see in the ordinance is any measures to ensure that the vision is actually fulfilled. So it talks about we're talking about a vision of residential mixed use of, single family, two-family, multifamily, townhomes, garden apartments. But there's no controls in place. So we're creating these areas, we're looking to create these areas of MUR, but we don't have any controls in place to ensure that that's not just going to become just mass apartments
Right.
and not actually become the vision of mixed-use residential. And that's probably my biggest thing, my biggest concern looking at it right now. I see it, I hear it, I like the sound,
Yeah.
but I'm, just concerned about a lack of control to ensure that the vision is actually fulfilled.
Gotcha.
Keep in mind, though, that the steering committee came up with this. There's not a lot of this mixed use in the township, and we still have mostly R1 and R2. If you look at their proposed zoning map, it's not a lot of the R2 and R1 that was changed in this mixed use. It's just certain sections that was proposed to be changed, and that was what the township adopted as a map. So it's not like they're taking this mixed use to be in all the R2s and all the R1s of the township. That township is still pretty much 60% white, which is R1.
Sure. I totally get that. It's small areas, but even still, my thought process is if we're gonna create new zoning districts and we're gonna change the map, then we need to do it in a thoughtful process to make sure that we actually achieve the outcome that we're attempting to achieve. Even in small areas, we want to make sure that the vision is actually fulfilled. If we're going to go through the process of making a change, this is the opportunity for us to discuss, all right, great concept. Now, what controls are we going to put in place to ensure we actually get to where we want to get to?
The controls would be that a lot of those areas don't actually get changed. They stay R1 or R2. On the proposed map, that doesn't mean we're gonna adopt it that way. This, right now, this is just changed, this little bit, this and this area. Of this whole township map, we're only looking at right now. These couple areas here. If, there's some of this area that's proposed to be changed to, mixed use, you can decide that whole area, I'm gonna make up a street, Chifani Road up there, that whole area that shows mixed use, you can decide not to rezone it to mixed use, it can stay R1. So, I mean, that's the control you have, that if it's proposed to be, mixed use, we're not putting any mixed use in this plan right now. I mean, a little bit up here that has public sewers, but most of the areas that the steering committee came up with, we're not even addressing. It's gonna stay, what this map is, R1, R2, whatever it is yesterday.
Sure.
That's the control you have, though, because we don't have to change any of those, R1s and R2s to mixed use in the zoning. We're only looking at 4 spots right now.
I guess I'm looking at it as cart before the horse question. Your conversation is, what I'm hearing you say is, well, yeah, we're making these changes in mixed-use residential, I hear your concerns, but we're only putting it in these few small sections.
We're looking at only these couple of little areas right now.
Right.
When you review it again for the next time, if someone, a property owner, decides to take that step and change more, in a subsequent hearing or subsequent months from now, the planning commission can recommend, hey, we don't think you should have any more of that mixed use in those areas there. I mean, that's the control.
Excuse me. I appreciate that, your thoughts on that, I do, I just, and that's, what you're saying is true, but at the same time, if we're gonna do it and do it right, this is the opportunity we have the opportunity now to put those controls in place to make sure that we don't get in a situation where we say, you know what? Thank goodness we didn't put MUR everywhere because it didn't turn out the way we wanted to. I'd rather say, hey, let's take this opportunity to put the controls in place so that we actually achieve the vision we want to achieve.
What do we do? I know that suggestion was about limiting percentages or things like that, but it's just not working.
Well, yeah, my initial first blush thought on it was that you would limit types of dwellings in there by percentages, so you could have, say, no more than, 15% garden apartments or, within the space. But to your point, that just punishes the guy who's late to the party for developing his property within that zoning district. And that's not really what we're looking to do. But I thought you had a good thought on it when we talked about it yesterday of, what if we said limited, the more dense housing options to properties that front on state roads as opposed to township roads, kind of like what you're already doing what you're proposing in MUC, in the mixed-use commercial.
That after we talk, and there's no, very little, if any, mixed-use residential that fronts on a state road. We've left all the mixed-use commercial that fronts on the state. Anything on township road, that's the part that stayed as the proposed as mixed-use residential.
I kind of, yeah, and I kind of had that thought a little bit last night as well. I was like, because I didn't have the map in front of me. We were talking, and I was wondering, I was like, are we going to run a situation? Because I'm looking at it now, and
We could do that with PRDs or consider it in the future, future PRD approval. This, like I said, there's there's any mixed-use residential that's fronting on a state road. It might be just consequence of that for where the property starts. That's about the only time it would be on a state road.
well, I think, yeah, all three districts front, all three zones that are looking to be, that you're looking to rezone are fronting on Rising Road. But there are multiple properties there that are then set back within those districts that don't front on Rising Road, such as the ones all there on Creedmoor Road.
So you're looking to redefine what's allowed in these two new, the MUR and the MUC?
Well, that's what they're proposing, the MUR and the MUC. I'm looking at it and saying, great concept, mixed use like the picture that they're showing on the screen, where you have this whole development with apartments, townhomes, single family, great concept, but
How do we guarantee
how
that?
do we actually get that? Because in my experience, if we say that, the developers are gonna, you come in and buy the property and then develop the property, they're not concerned about what the township's vision is. They're concerned about how much profit can I wring out of this piece of property, because that's what they're here for. They're in business for that purpose. So generally speaking, they wanna put as many units as possible on a given piece of property that they're developing. So, if garden apartments are the most profitable platform for them to make money, then MUR will just be all garden apartments. And I don't think that that's what any of us have in mind when we're talking about this MUR. So I'm not saying no, I'm just saying this is the opportunity to step back and let, more clearly define.
I don't know how to do that, other than reduce the amount of mixed-use residential that's proposed on that comprehensive plan after we adopt it.
I mean, that's an option, but I agree with you. I don't think that's what you want to do, and I don't think that's what I want to do either. I think that's why I'm bringing the question up, is because I can't think of anything.
I could be wrong, but it sounds like what you're saying is that you would prefer that the residential requests or applications are not use by right, but conditional use, so that we can manage as a township, percentage-wise. Is that consolidating what you're both saying?
If garden apartments seem like that'd be the highest density, you got a single development, garden apartments.
Yeah, I'm also no lawyer or anything, but I do know that it can be challenging to regulate dwelling units as a condition. Like, that's a fair housing. You can't make it harder to live somewhere, period. So that's a suggestion. It's just something would worry about.
And thank you, because that's why I wanted to bring this up. It's because you and I talked briefly yesterday. You and I each had some ideas, but we really, I don't know how good of ideas they were, but we, that's why I want to bring it up in this forum, because, we have a room full of intelligent people. Let's put our heads together and see if we can think of a way to accomplish that, because I think we agree that that's, making sure the vision is met is a good idea. It's just how do we get there? So conditional use, that was something we didn't think of. That's good. To his point,
yes,
can we do
exactly.
that?
When it is mixed-use residential, when it is residential as far as fair housing is concerned, you can't mitigate that. However, what Tom is saying is there's just these 3 smaller sections that are listed as mixed-use residential, which is essentially what would allow the township to control, to some extent, the potential for how much that, even if there were all garden apartments, it's only in those 3 small areas. So I think that's where you're coming from, Tom?
Yeah, and we can gauge that now, and I'm not saying you can't do this condition, that's a consideration you have to consider, there could be, this would make it harder for someone who wants to be part of the company. Right, you're not, say he's not an attorney, he's not
Sure.
saying that, so I think we could end up doing these small areas and we engage for
Yeah, and Christie says control, but maybe entice certain types to those parcels.
Yeah, I'd love to see something like that. I mean, I've seen many developments like that. I think they work really, this mixed use stuff. It works really, really well when it's done right. In our experience here in the township, like South Point is, it was brought to us as a vision from the developer. So we kind of gave them created the special district so that they had the flexibility to fulfill their vision. And we liked,
2 things about South Point, though. First of all, it went really well because it was a government partnership. It wasn't just a private developer that did that, so it was tax money. The second thing is, it was intermingled with the golf course. So I mean, you're not gonna get another South Point.
No, no.
Over in this area. And that's the point, though, because South Point, it's a mixed-use development, but we're stuck with this kind of mixed use. We're not gonna have a South Point mixed use.
right, but I agree. We're not going to, and I'm not trying to say this should be another South Point. I'm just saying that I like how that looks. I just don't know how we actually get that with, what we're putting out there. I'm just, looking at Murphy's Law. We give the developers the flexibility to do whatever they want, not whatever they want, but give them a large range of options.
I look at it, we're giving the property owners some flexibility. It's, our democracy runs on the fact that people consent to be governed. We're telling you, your property is going to be residential, yours is going to be commercial. They have to accept that, so, to me, this is giving them, the whole goal was to give them some, many opportunities in residential that was best for them. If they sell to the developer, to Orion, or to some other, I guess I wanted to give them some rights and some flexibility. So that's kind of stock market for them.
I guess the only other question I have, kind of drawn back to your point and Christie's point is, so let's say everything moves forward and all 3 MUR districts end up being, worst case, I know worst case scenario, but
High density.
yeah, it all ends up being high density, and we say, this doesn't work. Again, nobody in the room's an attorney, well, actually, retired. But, if we go back and say, okay, you know what, it didn't work, we want to continue using mixed use, but we want to pull that high density option out of there. Do we have that option, or at a later point? Or are we going to run into a point where we're discriminating, say, because Now we've changed the definition of the mixed use to eliminate that option.
We're saying the fact though, all these are on a state road, that's what you're not talking about, that might be ideal. If you look at them, they're all on a state road. This isn't a drainage road that we're looking at right now. So, the most we said that maybe we can force them to be on a state road, well, these happen to be.
I mean, the rest of the commission, I mean, more ideas, or am I just running a? Yeah, I mean, am I not, I'm seeing what Tom's saying, am I not, no one else seems to be speaking up, so am I the only,
I see what you're saying,
I'm just not sure how to get the answer.
but I also think that, sorry, I see what you're saying, but I also think that because the amount is the size that it is, that it gives us an opportunity to attempt and see, and Lord willing, it is not worst case scenario.
Well, and also, each site plan would still have to be approved. It would still have to go through the planning commission and the supervisor's approval, right?
Jason's point is the bar, it's used by right.
It's used by right, we wouldn't be able to tell them no.
You can't condition them out of it's used by right. It's not a conditional use. So if we do that, then someone can sell it to the developer, who's the developer, so there's two goals.
No, I get that, but I mean, there's still, I mean, you're still gonna have a board of supervisors looking at the site plans, right?
I mean, yeah, the plans will still have to be in conformance with all of our ordinances. So it's still gonna, they're not going to just build whatever they want, however they want to build it.
Right, right.
It'll be in conformance with our standards. My point was just trying to ask the question and see if we could think of some way to actually fulfill the vision of what is being proposed.
Let me just speak up, and I wasn't in on the original workshop meeting to really get what the true intent was, but just from what I'm hearing and kind of talking with Dan and Matt prior to this, it sounds like the whole intent and purpose of this is to provide flexibility to essentially encourage development in these specific areas, right? So I guess if you want to go more restrictive and specifically do an overlay that is purely mixed use, where every development is going to be forced into mixed use, you're going to be really kind of keyholing your way into only a few developers doing that. It's going to take you a while to actually develop those properties. So it might actually take you a step in the wrong direction if you do actually want to develop these, so.
Yeah, Mike, I would just offer in that I think we could explore some of the other communities that have been successful with mixed use. There's a good example in South Fayette with Hastings, one that's close by. And I think what you do is you want to limit overall density. And if they do, like apartments or senior living or something like that, there has to be a trade-off to include some element of other residential, like single family, like, other products that we're typically seeing. And I think there's some good examples of these around, and we could check. I know Cranberry, Ron Henshaw, the planner up there, has done a couple neighborhoods up there that are mixed use. So we could come back with some suggestions on maybe how to limit and get the vision without being totally restrictive.
Okay, I mean, I like that. Actually, Tom, as Dan was talking, it occurred to me, you and I were talking percentages of the district. But we could have just made it very broad percentages of each development or the individual properties as they're consolidated or whatnot.
Every development's there's gonna be express criteria and standards that have to meet, like setbacks, 10 foot, 5 foot, sides, rears, those kind of things we can have some input on, that limit things also.
Yeah, I think maybe on,
Actually, what percentage if you don't have so many in this zone?
or maybe scale it as you, if your development is more larger properties, you know, if you own an acre in that mixed-use residential, then you can do, you know, whatever you're gonna put a single-family home there, put a single-family home there. But if you're gonna develop, you know, 50 acres in there, now you gotta have some type of percentage to ensure that there's an actual mix of offerings within that development. Well, I think that's kind of what Dan was
I think that's-
alluding to.
I think that would fall under like a bulk area regulation, It probably could work in
That's-
some sort of language.
That's something we do, I think, need to include. In this district, the way I'm reading it, there is no area and bulk regulation, so that needs to be directly specified right off the bat. That's something.
That can't be a moving target.
Right, yeah, that has to, I mean, then how you're gonna it's impossible to regulate.
No, I think by the size of the property it's being developed, and on like a sliding scale based on that property they're developing, then it's not a moving target. It's a defined target. Thanks, Dan. I'll give you credit for that idea. He is.
Okay, moving on. The commercial mixed-use district now. Same idea. This time it's only allowing single-family residential on. I'm sorry. Same idea, but it's only allowing single-family residential being mixed with those compatible businesses that we discussed earlier. You can see the uses by right there. And then flipping on to the next page, this is where we get into the uses by right required to front that state highway. Again, these are uses that they expect, higher traffic volume, more impact, so that it'd be better to keep those on the roads that can handle them. And then you have your conditional uses. You can see greenhouse there has some additional regulations with it. And then 4 and 5 there start the area and bulk regulations. So all these uses, all the commercial uses here are going to have to meet the C1 zoning district area and bulk regulations. That's what number 4 says.
Real quick, back on number 3, conditional use, number 9, lot and area, is that a typo?
That is a formatting. That should be the section heading
Okay,
4, 4, and
that's-
5. Yeah, that'll be changed.
That's what I thought, I just wondered.
Yep, no problem.
Okay.
Why are there only not exceeding X amount of square feet requirements for convenience stores and pharmacies?
Where are you at? I'm sorry.
I'm looking at commercial mixed use, uses by right, 1J and 2B.
That's so convenience store that can't be bigger than 3,500 feet.
Oh, I understand what it means. What I'm asking is why are there only regulations on those ones and none others?
Tom, do you want to answer that one? It's suggestion.
I think that the smaller pharmacy, I'd see 3,000 is supposed to be up in the, that's my way to be anyway. Pharmacy. I think that should be bounced up to 1.
And then above 3,000 square feet, then it be a conditional use? Is that what?
No,
I mean, a use by, on state roads?
right, if the any standard pharmacy, you know, if you take out the parentheses, there, and, for pharmacy up in, like, C, pharmacy not exceeding 3,000 square. So we have two categories of pharmacy, that's what we're not,
Yes, salon pharmacy versus Walgreens.
I think that was just, that mixed up. I would never see put a small business on a state road and try to limit this size of this business on the state.
I guess the reason that I noticed it is because when you go down further in two is a sporting goods store. Not that I think Cabela's is going to put a location here, however, there's no square footage requirements on that, and there is on a pharmacy, and I would think Rite Aid would be more likely to build a larger facility versus,
City limits on the state highway.
okay. Same goes for the uses by right with the convenience store. I don't think Hobby Lobby is going to build out here, but they don't have a square footage requirement versus a convenience store.
So you're saying that the square footage limit should be added to hobby shop on one, and then it's hobby shop without a square footage limit should be placed on two?
I guess I'm saying if there are square footage limits, it should be part of a condition and not a use by right. Or if it should be across the board and not just this one or that one, to be fair.
I think the understanding is that there should be a limit if it's on the state highway. And these are still mild businesses, it's not like body shops and car dealerships and things like that. It's still considered almost service type businesses. So I think there should be no limits on the state road. And if anybody wouldn't put any limits on the size for the local roads, that's another story.
I mean, to your point, the way, if you want to put a Rite Aid in, you can't put a Rite Aid in, you can't put a Walgreens in on a township road, because they're greater than, it has to go onto a state road. But Walmart can go in on a township road, because that's a general retail merchandise store. So I think to her point, your square footage limit needs to be more across the board for the township roads.
Right, well, if you want to look through those, you're right, there should be, not exceeding 3,000 square feet in a general retail merchandise store if it's on a township road. So maybe a lot of those, we should have that paragraph next to it. Not on this, on the second category, state roads.
Yeah, you got like Toby Tyler's Hobby Shop over on, out by the airport, and then you have Hobby Lobby. So the square,
Work on that, if it's, if some of these things could be a Walmart, then that wasn't the intent. We'll put a paragraph after, parentheses after that says not to exceed square footage.
you might be able to just put to your point, Chris, to be able to just put it for that whole section. Put a general, just square footage not to exceed for all the commercial options on township roads.
You mean everything from C on, not for farms or single family?
Yeah,
Professional business offices, you should say that can't be 3,000. But I think it shouldn't be all of them, but you should pick out the ones you think are be serious and be big. It shouldn't be there. I think that general retail was the prime one on there that we should apply. What other ones not there you say should be limited? You look at eight.
well, I mean, I go all the way down the list. I mean, Booker Stationery Store. There's a big difference between your local neighborhood bookstore and a Barnes and Noble. Are you looking to put a Barnes and Noble on a township road? Or are you trying to limit them to front on state roads?
Practicality, I mean, there wouldn't be a Barnes and Noble on a Glass Hill Road.
I know, I'm talking about the future development along the State Road, Rising Road, and the Turnpike there, which is where we're looking at this development.
That's what you said, that we should limit them on state roads.
I think that's why Jason is saying, because under uses by right, 1, C through Y or Z, if you add the pharmacy not to exceed 3,000 square feet there, to just have for C through Z, square footage limit on township roads.
If you want to pull business and professional offices out of there and just maybe slide it to right after the residential uses or to the end of the list, so that you can just say see through whatever.
Well, let's all look at that. We don't have to do it right now, but
Yeah.
we should all look at that and see some of those, you're right, the car or gift shop, we don't need to say it's limited to 3,000. Most of those are, right?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest card shops out there are Hallmarks, they're still small.
Right. So we'll work on that. So now, we have a public hearing coming up anyhow, so between now, our public hearing, and then when the supervisors have to vote on it, we can, add those paragraphs to all the ones that you think there could be a big store, like the hobby shop and the hobby lobby. Those will be there.
Yeah, it's a good catch, Christie. I had another note, just a side note, as I was thinking through, because I know we just recently adopted, well, not recently, but in the last year, adopted a sign ordinance. And the sign ordinance is very specific on signage in different districts. We're probably gonna have to go back and amend that ordinance now, once we add MUC and MUR. And that's probably not the only ordinance, there's probably a number of ordinances that's the first one that pops to mind. But there's probably a couple more in there at least that are gonna need to be amended.
We have the C2, C3, the convenience commercials, things like that, they're already addressed under the sign ordinance, so these were taken from the C2 and C3.
No, I'm just saying the ordinance would need to be amended to say C2, C3, MUC.
Yeah, if the sign ordinance applies, if the sign ordinance 1607 applies or something like that, that's how you cover it.
Yeah. I just had a note in here that we can't forget about that as we're adding the new zoning districts.
Okay, section 2 on the following page, that just outlines that we had to make changes to the use chart because we were adding two new districts, kind of along the lines of what you guys just discussed. Ordinance amendments, and then the rest of these sections are. Sorry. All right, so now we're on to the big one, the general changes.
Hang on, I might have some more notes while we're here. Okay, nope, that's all I have on the MUC, MUR.
Can I give a quick prelude to this definition?
Of course, yeah.
This came about, I had asked Gretchen and Dan and this is, you talk to our zoning officer, our code enforcement officer, any staff member in the township, look at one of our ordinances and had to scratch your head, bring it up. You know, if anything that made you have to wonder, let's clarify it, down to the definition. So that's why there's a lot of these are just being clarified. Other than the zoning officer had issues before, that, you want to try to avoid that, is not sit right off the bat, that, rid of discrepancies, definitions, and where you have to interpret a definition. So I just said to everybody there, if something made you scratch your head, as far as bring it up to these guys, and then they're going to address that definition, and Gretchen, Gretchen, good at that. I already did that, so that's where this came from.
Yeah, all right, so section 1, the term code enforcement officer has been replaced with township zoning officer everywhere in the UDO, wherever it occurred. Section 202, these are newly added definitions to the definition section. They weren't in there before, now they are. The big one there is accessory dwelling unit. We will get to that later on because that's a whole ordinance change coming up in this. Any questions with those first two? Section 3 is newly updated definitions. As you can see there, the underlined first definition is what is currently in the UDO. The normal text is what is being proposed to change. Starting off here, the contractor's office versus the contractor's yard. The office is strictly an office. You can't store your big trucks there, your excess materials. That's for a yard, and that's what the change is. Essential services, we added facilities such as police, fire, EMS. Updated the improvements, or public improvements definition, again, just to be as specific and as clear as possible. Okay, that's it for section 3, actually. Okay, yeah, any questions? I'm sorry, if I'm going too fast, please slow me down. Section 4 is requiring escrow for conditional use applications. It's just putting it out there that if it's applicable, escrow is required. Same with section 5.
Hey, Dan,
Yes,
is it possible for you to mute when you're not speaking?
sure.
Thank you.
Sorry, the contractor's office and contractor's yard, the original has apostrophe showing ownership. The amended, the apostrophes just disappear, making them plural.
Good catch. Section 6 extends the time period after you receive your conditional use approval from 12 months until 2 years now. Same with section 7, except it's a site plan review, and it went from 1 year to 5 years.
So I do have a question on that one, and Tom or Darlene, either one of you, what was the, like, amending expiration date for conditional uses from 1 year to 2 year? I mean, I get it. You grant the conditional use, it takes them a while to actually get boots on the ground, and that just, how many times have we had one, we approve one, it comes right back before us a year later, because they're now finally going to go forward, but their conditional use expired. But the site plan approval from 1 year to 5 year, that's a pretty big change. Is there a reason behind that? That wasn't one of yours?
I believe that's correct. That's an MPC requirement.
So, I mean, would you guys talk about either one of those? I mean,
It's, yeah, the site plan, that's up to us. And, depend on, there's always things that, there's so long to get them, that it's just a year, I've heard DEP permits, some planning orders are taking that long.
extended beyond a year, I don't think any of us are questioning extended beyond a year.
That, we talked about it.
That's something I can review.
Yeah, I just think I mean, extending beyond 1 year makes sense for the number of things that have to come back before, it's just because it took a while to get things going, but to go from 1 year to 5 years seems pretty extreme, unless it's mandated and we're just finally catching up with.
I can provide you all with a better explanation. Section 8, this one's a little confusing for whatever reason, it's just long. All it's changing here is the addition of warehouses, indoor and outdoor storage as a special exception in the C1 district. It's number 2.
So warehouses, indoor and outdoor storage, so is that,
Right now, they're only permitted indoor warehouses, one, and warehouses indoor and outdoor is only in I2. I don't know that that's, ideal.
where did that come from? I don't know either. That's kind of why that and
We've never had an issue with it.
in indoor and outdoor storage, is that also allowing storage units?
No,
Or is that separate?
yeah, warehousing is like, that we were dealing with up on West End Drive. It's on here for an indoor warehousing. So, everything else out. It's on here more than colleges. So I don't think that's, we've never had an issue with that before. I don't know if it should be in there. I don't know, do you know where it came from?
We received minutes, notes with handwritten markups, and I went through those handwritten markups and made them nice formal text in this. I can assure you that Gateway Engineers did not make things up here to mess with you guys.
Nobody's accusing you of that.
Okay.
You're okay.
All right.
We're talking amongst ourselves, trying to figure out where the idea came from.
This is Dan, this is Dan, can I jump in?
Please.
So, a number of these, changes, general changes came out of Liz and Jack and I met, to review things that were problematic for her in dealing with zoning matters, so that she wouldn't have to take on so many, cases of going to the zoning hearing board for appeals. So some of this stuff is just clarification. I don't know if that answers this specific question, but that's where it came from.
Yeah, that doesn't answer that. That's not a clarification. That's a whole, we're in a whole category from I2 to C1.
Yeah,
Are you looking at it? You looking at what we're looking at?
why don't you guys go on to the next one? Let me look over the text. I have it here.
Okay.
Dan, this is specific to, we're on Section 8, right? On the
Yeah.
Section 8 amendment,
Section 8.
item 2. Do we want to put a pin in that one and come back after Dan has a few minutes to look at it?
Yeah, I'm fine with, would anybody else have an objection to that? Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, real quick, just for your, in section 2, improvements in the titles, improvements private required and improvements private optional is spelled incorrectly. You missed an E.
Where are we at?
Section 2. Sorry, I went back.
Section,
Of the UDO.
okay.
Under definitions, improvements where it's capitalized is the title of the definition.
Spelled on both times. I'm gonna get you a red pen.
Okay. Section 9. This is adding single-family and multifamily dwellings to C2 convenience commercial with regulations attached with that.
I have a question on this one. If we're adding single-family, multifamily use by right into C2, isn't that now just making that essentially MUC? I mean, not word for word, but isn't that essentially the same thing at that point? Essentially making-
This was more done for single lots that were out there. It wasn't intended. It was more, there was an issue that came up, and this was tried to be a correction to that issue.
This was the one that we were talking about yesterday with the.
We're talking about some recent actions, written up in the,
Thank you, Carrie.
Hi, Carrie.
this, I agree with Dan, that can probably be taken out. Dan, I don't know. if we-
Okay.
We probably don't need that anymore. That was in the.
Okay.
That was in the old ordinance, looks like verbatim from the old ordinance.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Okay, I see what you're saying.
So section 9, those changes aren't needed at all then?
When this ordinance, we didn't have a C2, it was changed, this was, under C1, if you look in the ordinance, that's language under the C1. I don't think it has to be there at all. Dan can look at it again, he'll know, but I think you're gonna see that you're gonna suggest it be eliminated, both of those two, 29 and 30, and that asterisk on the next page. It was years ago that some people already had lots of proven, and they might have even improved it somewhat, then not to change the zoning. So we're trying to give them the benefit that if they made improvements or laid out lots, and we happened to change the zoning, they could still finish their development. They were looking for the developments that were reported, started, and reported, and not make it have to undo things. If you read that, it's lots of records created prior to 1999.
Yeah. Yeah, 99.
Hey, Tom, if you recall, this was I think this was the Mahalski lot. Do you remember that one?
Right, that applied also, so I'm just saying, I think we gotta look at that, but I don't know that it's probably not harmful, what it says there, but it can be looked at again before, it might be eliminated. Dan, you'll know what to do with that.
Okay.
Section 10 updates section 1204 of the UDO, the accessory uses. This is a chart that indicates the maximum size an accessory use can be of the total lot based on the lot size. It's just updated to increase clarity. You can see whichever is less is added for the percent of primary structure column. And then that second bullet there shows you like the definition of what the percentage of primary structure square footage is.
And that was from an issue that in front of our zoning hearing board, someone had that issue. They took this footprint in a two-story addition, and they expanded their building 30%, whatever, they were on the 15%. So they just showed the square footage of the footprint, half the addition, and it ended up going to the hearing board in the common police court. And so it's just a clarification.
Section 11, again, updates 1204, and this is the addition of accessory dwelling units, or ADUs, or granny flats. You might hear them referred as all of those. If you look at the slides, or you look behind you there, just giving you an example of what these are, and then the provisions that are included to regulate them. And the provisions are also that subsection 8 there. That we did this, yeah, that's just from Google. So we're recommending that we're gonna regulate the area in bulk, the same as the primary structure. So this would be a nonconformity. This shouldn't be able to happen, where it's right on the property line there, right on the fence line.
Yeah.
What are the planning commission members to weigh in on that too? I don't know what's best for this, and put an accessory structure. A lot of times, when we call it grading flat, it's for an old timer or whatever, grandmother or something. You build it for her, and if she expires, and then you get the building sitting there, next thing, the kid, and his family movement. It could have an impact on the neighbors there. So that's something we need you to weigh in on, about, try to do percentages, we try to do what kind of setbacks. I think Dan thought it should be, in fact, sometimes should be the same setback as your house. So if your sides are 10, I don't know how you could do it with a person who doesn't have a 35 or a 40-foot setback. If you're on your own 40-foot setback, you can't do it with grading flat then. Is that fair? So I don't know enough about that. This needs a lot of thought.
You know, I'm glad you're asking for the feedback on it. I mean, I think I like the idea, and yeah, you're gonna limit, some people are not gonna be able to put them in, they're just not gonna have a lot large enough to be able to accommodate it, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. My biggest thing is I didn't see any language in there, and I think it, about the ability to be able to rent that space. Like, you know, I think there was some language in there about, where was it now?
Well, it says the principal structure on the lot with, yeah, the principal structure on the lot with the accessory dwelling unit must be owner occupied. So,
The principal structure has to be owner occupied, but it doesn't say who can occupy the accessory structure.
Right.
So, you know, now you're gonna have people building, I don't like the granny flat term, what's the other term? Accessory structure.
ADU is the easy.
Yeah, and then just running it out for income, is that what we wanna allow?
You could add a requirement stating no transient uses, or don't make it a business, like it can't be used as a business, because that would be,
I mean, we're wading into murky waters, or how do you regulate that? You know,
Water meters to sewer bills,
yeah,
everything.
yeah,
Double
does this,
everything.
yeah, does the accessory unit, dwelling unit can have all its own utilities?
Should.
All right,
Well, maybe you shouldn't. That way you might be less inclined to rent it out to a stranger.
Well, that's true too.
You're paying his water and sewer bill, it's one line, comes from your house to the accessory structure. If this is my mother-in-law, and she lives in my building in my backyard, that's one thing, but then once she's gone, am I gonna have another family, how to use the space in the building?
Yeah, I'm guessing the sewage authority would want that second tap fee if this were a completely separate.
what are you saying, Jack? I'm sure. Yeah, 3 that you're aware of. Yeah.
Rent them out, exactly what they started as, in mother-in-law suites. Passed on, they were gonna rent them out, and everybody is stopped.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah, I like the idea of being more restrictive.
yeah, but you know, I mean, again, you're heading into murky waters, am I renting to you? Or, you know, am I renting to my mother? Or is my mother sold her house and now she moves in and she's kicking it on bill, like she has, you know, good retirement saved up, she's kicking it on bills, is she paying me rent or not? You know, like, I mean, there's a huge murky gray area there that,
Let's say, you said it has to be a family member that occupies it, not even down the line, how do you want it?
right. It's,
You guys can think about this all you want, I don't do this.
All right,
So it's similar to a guest house.
yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's a guest
So-
house.
Must be.
Is it permitted currently?
You can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think there's anything about ADUs in the current UDO. It's a kind of newer thing in like the planning. I know like Portland, Oregon
You're
made it
only
big.
allowed one single-family structure on a property.
That's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
You have to subdivide.
There's nothing prohibiting allowing a in-law suite, what you call an accessory living structure, but you limit the size, I don't know anything about it. You said there's nothing wrong with doing it, you won't have to subdivide your property.
No, she's saying right now, if you wanted to put an accessory structure and have, once you put a second dwelling unit, you can't have two dwelling units, single family.
This is not permitted.
This would be, it would, right now would be it would be a second, single family residence. So right now, they're not permitted.
The other thing, what is it that Granny needs a car, and she has her own driveway past, get back in there. I mean, it needs a lot of work, it needs a lot of thought.
Yeah, because now, again, to your point, once Granny passes on, you're renting that accessory structure, but the access is an extension of your driveway. Now, do they have right of way? You can't park in your own driveway. You're blocking,
The second one, our ordinance allows two driveways on a single lot, that's the maximum. So, have a new driveway right past the side of their house and go in and access that. SD allows two houses on one driveway.
SD does, yeah. But I think we only have one instance of that, and they're doing away, or no, they're adding the garage on it. So they still have it. But that's the only instance of it I know where they actually took advantage of that, right? Or no, there's, the new one's being built down in the.
You talk about SD,
Yeah,
they're consolidating that property. There's 3 lots, 1 driveway, 2 houses, right? So the bottom house and the accessory structure, they're consolidating that lot.
but there's some lots that currently, that Graziani's developing currently in Alto Piano where it's a single driveway and then it splits. And there's 2 houses off a single driveway. Not the first left when you come into Alto Piano, the second left going down there. There's like, I think 4 or 5 of those driveways. Do you know what I'm talking about?
But those are still single family, one primary structure in each lot, they're two separate lots.
Yeah, they're just sharing a driveway.
Yeah, so that's not this.
No, I was addressing Jack's statement, sorry. We went down a rabbit hole.
Between Matt and Dan and everybody, they're all just, think that one.
There's a lot to this one. And I guess the other question to go along with that is, because there's so much to think about that, do we want to try to address ADUs in this?
We have to, I mean, that was one of the issues that came up. So at least if we have this, it might not be perfect, but we have something to guide, we can always amend it, we can work on it, we can come up with something better.
Well, right now, they're not permitted.
Let's say it's not permitted, how do you deny it? I said, going to the accessory structure.
2 single-family residences on a single lot.
That's not considered single family, I don't think. Because you don't call it whether or not it's not an efficiency.
I think the matter of limiting it by the size of the way we have it in the ordinance now, by making it a percentage, is important. And I think the key thing to say is you're only allowed one. So if you had an apartment, because once they build it, you're not going to be able to control whether they put it on Airbnb or they rent it to their mother-in-law or whatever they do. I mean, you're allowing this type of activity to occur. You try to make it that it's not going to impact any neighbors, So I don't think you're going to see a lot of these on smaller lots, but you're going to see them on lots that are big enough to have perhaps an apartment above a two-car garage that would have enough room. I mean, you have to have adequate parking so that people aren't parking on the street. You know, there's some other little nuances, but I think if you just say you can only have one of them, no matter what, that's the key.
But then, would you agree that we should just have it address it like it is here? It's not, exactly what we want, and then amend it as we work on it.
Yes, I agree.
So let's at least keep it in there, with not do this, and keep thinking about it.
I mean, this is like nothing new in the sense that there probably are a lot of other either cities or municipalities that have some sort of guest house provision. Maybe there's a model out there somewhere that could be utilized.
But Dan will get some model ordinances too from our association. We do that a lot. We follow all the ordinances across the whole state. We choose to find something.
Okay, section 12, again, it's a clarifying update. I guess there was some confusion with the continuance of an alteration of non-conforming uses. We try to make these as specific as possible. I can point out here's like number 2 here. It kind of gives like a situation. For example, a non-conforming restaurant that has already been approved may expand by constructing an additional dining room. However, a non-conforming restaurant that has been already approved may not construct a bar. The bar is not the same existing lawful trade as the restaurant. 2 different uses. So just like making that as clear as possible.
I had a question on this section, and it's about the language saying, at the effective date of the adoption of this chapter. Is there gonna be a problem now because now we're amending? Is that essentially gonna reset that date for everybody?
Oh, sure. You amend it. Something prior to that. Amendment, until you advertise an amendment, they're under the old thing, whatever it was. So it's quicker to get on it. I mean, if we think we should work on something, we do it after we've done something. It's safer.
I do believe when you reference the UDO or any ordinance, it says, or as may be amended. And so when you add the amendment, that's like, that's covering it. It's.
So you're not resetting the effective date? Or you are resetting the effective date?
That's.
My point is this, if we're just clarifying existing definitions, do we want to essentially, for people who are non-conforming, and we're trying to, but they're arguing there's a non-clarity in the definition, now we're saying, we're giving a reset, we're clarifying the definition to make it clear they're non-conforming. But we're given a reset date on it, so they can go back and be like, well, it was in existence prior to the effective date, so it's,
Clarification, change the amended definition, it's still an amendment. Once we advertise, then people are bound by it. But if they have an application or something in before that, they're under the old rule. It doesn't matter. If it's an amendment, it's an amendment. Clarification, there's no such thing as a clarification in an ordinance, it's just an amended ordinance. Or something, or the criteria or the standard, it's still amendment.
so I hear what you're saying, I'm not sure if we're saying the same thing though. So I'm gonna give an example, and we'll see if maybe I'm understanding it incorrectly. So on expansion, a non-conforming building or use may be expanded by 15% of the space occupied at the effective date of the adoption of this chapter. So, I mean, it's kind of addressed a little bit in one, where the building or use has not previously been expanded by as much as 15% within 10 years prior. but again, to the effective date. So if you have so let's say the original effective date, whenever that was written, was 2007, and now we're outside of that 10-year window, but now you're making a new effective date with the amendment. What I'm saying is, do we want to change that language of saying the effective date of the adoption of this chapter and actually state the effective date of the original adoption of that rule?
The only time that comes into effect, there's an appeal. If there's a dispute or a zoning officer decision that has to go somewhere. If we adopt this, the new definition will be shown to anybody who applies for something. Anybody who's had applied before that definition, they're still gonna try to use the old one and use it as determination has to be made. I guess I see what you're saying, it's not clear, but, when you amend something, anything prior to that, they're gonna argue the same, they're gonna use the old sentence. It's to their advantage. And if it's not clear, if there has to be an interpretation, then they're gonna go after that avenue.
That's what I'm saying. We can remove that, we can clarify that and remove that interpretation by, instead of using that generic language at the effective date of the adoption of this chapter, just state the date that the previous one was adopted. That way it's clear that we're not resetting your 10-year window. You can't do another 15% expansion on top of a 15% expansion.
That part's not unclear with 10 years. The date's the date whenever they vote to approve it. This is just clarifying, exactly how we said it.
I have a suggestion on this one. Why don't we just have the municipal solicitor look at the language? We know the intent.
What's different in this one? I don't even see the difference in these two. You use A for an example.
So, right, the language, what I'm saying is I think that language wasn't changed. I think that language should be changed. In addition to the other changes that were made, like in 2 where there was the example added.
Oh, yeah.
I think when we change it, in the original one, it says occupied at, 15%, may be expanded by 15% of the space occupied at the effective date of the adoption of this chapter. What I'm saying now is, now that we're updating it, we should actually just state what that date was.
Okay.
Yeah.
A didn't change.
I'm saying it should. Otherwise, someone's going to say, oh, well, the effective date is now, so now I can do another, you just gave me a free pass to do another expansion.
Section 13, this is a change to the use chart, but we discussed that most of these are going to be not actually changed. We're going to remove it, so it's irrelevant right now. And then 14, 15, 16, and 17, again, are the standard language.
I have no notes.
If we want to go back to that section, I can explain that section 8, number 2.
Yes, section 8, yeah.
Yeah, I think the intent there was to, C1 does not mention warehouses, indoor and outdoor storage. So I actually think that the question for the planning commission is, should that be a use by right in C1? A conditional use, or a special exception? I think the intent, the way this was written, is we were just adding it as a use, that's the purpose. Because right now, we have nothing to address it.
You have a say if it's conditional use, you have no say if it's a should be in front of them, because you and our board, as our professionals who we have helping us, we're better, at setting conditions, for each individual parcel, location, if you're in a dense area or a sparse area. The zoning hearing board, they really don't have an engineer that helps them, since they're within the feedback. So if there's ever a question of something like that, I'd lean toward giving it as a conditional use, and not a special exception. Keep it from you and us.
Yeah, so the recommendation would be include that as a conditional use.
No, I still don't think it should be even allowed in commercial. Warehousing is considered an industrial operation.
Okay.
Unless I'm wrong, I mean, what do you think about that? What do you consider warehousing? Do you think warehousing in commercial?
Well, warehouses could be we had Amazon looking at property over near South Fayette on, what road was that on? That was on Mayview Road, yeah, Mayview Road. So, you could get a big warehouse somewhere. You could get a big warehouse over in Cool Valley.
Yeah.
Cool Valley isn't C1 though.
No, but it's if you make it a commercial
There's C1 there.
use, if you make it a use by right as a commercial use, then you essentially could get it in Cool Valley.
You get it anyhow, it's permitted in BPD.
Okay, I don't have it all in front of me, but I'm just trying to use as an example. So Tom, you think it should be a use by right in C1, and I don't have a problem with that either.
No,
They
he's
say the
saying,
opposite.
he's saying it should not be a use by right.
Or conditional use, or a use by special. I don't think it should be allowed at all.
Oh, okay, I'm with you. Okay.
I'm not trying to speak to you, think about it or address that, to me, warehousing is a industrial operation.
The only thing I think we need to look at, Tom, is I don't think we have it in any of our districts. So somebody could come in by curative amendment if we don't have.
No, we allow, warehousing indoor storage is allowed in I-1, it's a permitted use in I-1. In I-2, it's warehousing indoor outdoor storage is a permitted use in I-2.
I think it's permitted in SD too, isn't it? And it's permitted in BPD, for sure.
Hey, Dan, question about, does this have something to do with indoor storage? Do you know if indoor storage is also used for like storage units, or is that separately defined? Maybe that was the clarification?
Well, I asked
You
that
know,
question.
allowing
earlier.
storage unit facilities as part of commercial rather than just industrial?
That was the question I started to ask initially, Tom, and you said no.
No, that's a whole separate category.
Is it its own use?
Storage for, retail, storage, self-storage, that's a whole separate category.
Yeah.
Okay.
And warehousing isn't considered, self-storage.
Right, yeah, we're two different
Just
things.
read you. I-1 industrial use by right, warehousing indoor storage, period.
Okay, so somebody has a big piece of commercial property, they would have to get it rezoned first if they wanted to put in warehousing.
Where do we have big pieces of commercial property?
Well, for instance, over there,
Cecil Township. Where
No.
commercial, we have is long 50 there, it's all that cliffside by the railroad.
What about Weavertown? You're wanting to reason.
Right.
So what if, to his point, I mean, just, I'm playing devil's advocate here, what if they want to put in a big warehouse in that? It's a large piece of property that's adjacent to I-2.
All right, wait, just one thing, and then it says, I-2 heavy industrial warehousing with indoor or outdoor storage. So, I mean, it's permitted, Dan, and it's not like it's, amendment. But yeah, Jason's point is well taken. It should be conditional use.
I don't think that it's, right now it's not permitted. The question for us is, do we think that in certain situations, we might be willing to allow it in C1?
I yield to that. Matt, what do you think?
He's going to defer to the recommending body.
Right, yeah, yep.
And that's the good training right there.
I just think you see some of these bigger data centers and warehouses and stuff that become, centers of development, so you don't want to limit yourself. I think the conditional use is an option if somebody, and you can make it a conditional use, and you could put an acreage on it if you wanted a minimum acreage.
Large buffers, yeah.
I just have a bad taste in my mouth, Dan, from that West End, that warehouse, we asked for indoor warehousing, as soon as he got it approved, I was over here to work, pipe and all this stuff with power outside. Four backhoes, 2 excavators, 2 stake tank trucks, it was all sitting on the property, and everyone could get contractors going. Right after we got the building, we gave him that approval, where he asked for indoor warehousing.
So do you have that
Yeah.
note then?
Yeah, yep,
I think we'll have conditional use on that.
additional use, yep.
Okay, so we'll come up with some criteria for that conditional use.
So I guess I could run through and summarize unless you guys have further discussion. I think we got to the end, right?
Yeah.
I think we did get to the end.
you
If
guys
you,
have still
if you were
comments?
capable of summarizing,
Oh, I am,
wow.
and I will. With no more discussion items? Maybe this will spur discussion items. So some of the takeaways here. We discussed reviewing the bulk area requirements for the MUR district regarding multiple uses for, or encouraging multiple uses for larger lots, if you recall that one. Adding max building sizes for specific uses by right in the mixed-use district, but not along the state roads.
Mixed-use works, talking about commercial?
Mixed-use commercial, yeah, I'm sorry. Did I say commercial mixed-use or? But anyway, yeah, mixed-use commercial. Removing the max size from the pharmacy use in the commercial mixed-use along the state road. That would go into the township road option. I think that was just a clerical error. So we had some minor formatting adjustments within the mixed-use ordinance. We'll review whether 5-year site plan approval was specific to the MPC, or if that's another requirement.
Well, then if it's not, would you suggest 2 years for that also? Standing it for 2 years, the site plan approval?
What's everyone's thoughts on that? I thought 5 was a little.
I'm going to jump in on this one. MPC's 5 years, guys.
Oh. Well, that settles that.
Cool. So then we had some discussions about the warehouse indoor-outdoor storage use in the C1 district, and it sounds like we're going to consider conditions.
Yeah, we're going to come up with some conditions for the planning commission to review as a conditional use.
Section 9.
On
Go ahead.
that, for conditional use, you can list indoor warehousing, indoor storage warehousing, then you can list some specific conditions that automatically are in the ordinance, plus any other conditions the township wants to add. And then
Right.
other conditions are the ones that are flexible, depending on setbacks, and how big the property is, and how far back it is from the fence area. But you can list some that are automatic.
And I think we'd want different conditions based off indoor or outdoor, rather than lumping them together.
Oh, sure, yeah, I think Dan knows that.
Yeah.
We'll look at that. We talked about Section 9, which was an amendment to Section 908 of the C2 Commercial District. Uses by right specifically noted single-family, multifamily dwellings. I don't think there was any adjustments to that, so we were talking about removing that section.
Removing the section, yeah.
Removing the
Or
section.
removing this section, not the whole section in the ordinance, just the updates. Yes,
Right,
thank you,
okay.
sorry.
Rental language to be considered to be added for accessory dwelling units, potentially in addition to reviewing limits to use of driveways and other restrictions to be considered for the accessory dwelling unit definition and regulations.
Well, we're gonna, it's gonna be in there, we're gonna get something adopted, and if we agree to that, then we keep working on it. We want ordinance, and the
And then I think the last note I had was amending section 12 regarding expansions beyond 10 years. That 15% expansion beyond 10 years, and how we'll have the solicitor review that language and whether that's something that can be tightened up.
Yeah, yeah.
Mixed-use commercial, some of those businesses should be permitted.
We don't need to discuss that tonight, though, do we? Okay.
I'm saying, call Dan,
I know.
Yeah, we know.
We gotta get out of here. I'm concerned about this.
And I might call Walt tomorrow and tell him that we set a new record here or something.
Do you guys have to make a motion or anything?
That was gonna be my next question on that. Are we gonna, Dan, I don't
Well,
think we need,
I
we should,
think that the planning commission has a couple options. You could make a recommendation to the supervisors tonight. You could make it you can make it at your next meeting, because what's going to happen is the supervisors are going to do their own public hearing on the 14th of August. So, it would be good, if we get things cleaned up enough that you felt better next month making the recommendation on
Yeah.
things.
we won't be voting on it until September,
Yeah.
yeah, there's no reason to make a motion on, do we, yeah, let's just make that motion. I mean,
Table? I'll second that motion. Motion to table. Christie?
Aye.
Aye.
I,
I make a motion to adjourn.
Just one question for the planning commission. I know we sent some of these things hard copy to you. Would you prefer, when we make these revisions, to get you hard copies again?
It
Or
would be
is
greatly
electronic
appreciated.
fine?
yeah, I think
Yeah, it
so.
would be helpful.
Okay.
We actually, those are three different things. Do we have to table all three things separately? Just to clear it up?
I will make a motion to table all three agenda items regarding the zoning changes, the two ordinances, the UDO and the mixed use, until the August meeting.
I'll second the motion.
And the definition ordinance.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to adjourn.
Bye, Dan.
Yeah, let's go.
Meeting adjourned. Woo! Dave, we're getting at it like 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, right?
Yeah, we have dinner now. Is that a record?
I think it
That
is.
was critical. I mean, that had to be
It,
done.
it was. And
Meaty, yes, that's a good way to put it.
I mean,
There's a lot of legitimate discussion.
yeah, no, you know, it's. Is it?
Oh, I appreciate that.
I felt like I was beating a dead horse, but at the same time, I was like, I know what I'm saying. And I ultimately, I think we had spoken where we got.
Yeah,
to.
they're new, newer. We just rebranded,
Matt,
yeah. They're like felt.
nice job. Be confident. Speak into the microphone.
Thank you.
Oh, no problem, yeah.
You'll find your voice where you don't need the microphone. That's not a bad thing.
Good night.
Have a good night.
See you guys.
Nice job. These meetings are better when they're not just, we're in and out 15 minutes and and everything gets rubber stamped and moved on. Debates,
Well, yeah, it shouldn't be like that. You
debate's a
guys are-
very, very good thing, but it is exhausting sometimes.
Means you're using your brain. Well, hey, it was a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, it was nice meeting you as well.
Yeah, hopefully I didn't stir the pot too much.
No, you guys were great. Like, you got a little defensive there at the one point. I'm like, we're not accusing you guys of anything.
defensive, I just didn't want to.
No,
Those little green corners.
we want to, we know that those ideas came from multiple sources, and whenever we're reading it, and I'm reading faces, and I'm like, when Tom and Jack are both looking like, what the hell? I know that there's, like, I need to ask the question, where did that come from? Because if neither one of them know where it came from, then, something was miscommunicated or,
I think part of the problem, he wasn't part of the original workshop meeting. He wasn't even at Gateway yet, so he kind of came in partially through the process. So I think some of those questions that you may have had, he's not really speaking firsthand in that case, kind of relying on the notes.
yeah.
Makes it a little bit more.
It was fantastic too, having Tom and Darlene here tonight. Because, I think that's one of the biggest, I've been on the plan commission 8 years now, 9 years. And I think one of my biggest, we're appointed by the Board of Supervisors, right? So we serve essentially at their pleasure. And if you saw early on, one of the first items was a review of recent decisions by the Board of Supervisors. What I found over the years, we were operating in a vacuum. And it really came to light when we were doing the whole, we were updating our comprehensive plan. The Board of Supervisors had a vision, and they were going this direction. The Planning Commission had a vision going this direction.
You guys pull each other apart,
And
nothing's getting done.
and the Comprehensive Plan Committee was going this direction. And I'm just like, so at one point, I was on the Planning Commission, but I was also part of the Comprehensive Plan Committee. And I said, I need supervisors at some of these meetings, because we need some feedback, because, the reality is that the committee can create a whole plan. Then it gets set before the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission gets to say, yep, we like that, no, we don't like that, and they can take in left turn and right turn the plan, but then it goes.
You're wasting your time either,
Yeah.
You're putting a lot of time and effort into refining these things that are essentially supposed to be supporting their ideas.
We're supposed to be the guiding document.
Right.
And, so we want to have a good guiding document, but if the Board of Supervisors already have a vision in their mind, this is the direction we're going, I don't want to waste any time looking that direction. Unless they're open to ideas, then let's have that, come to the meeting, let's have that. But it was real big for us in that process. I started asking, that was something, 2 years ago, I asked Jack to start doing, was start off every planning commission, review the decisions of the Board of Supervisors on agenda items that we had previously provided
Let's just say
opinions on.
and see what, how they're affected by.
Because we're not necessarily,